If you care just about power, I get it. But if it were my money, let's say you're a Porsche enthusiast, you got about 100K to spend, are you getting a 991.2 Carrera T, the driver's 911, or do you get a Cayman GTS 4.0? That's option with a 6-speed manual. We got a 7-speed manual here. This one has several modifications to improve the handling dynamics. This 2018 991.2 Carrera T is powered by a 3-liter flat 6, turbocharged, making 370 horsepower, 331 pound-feet of torque, weighing in around 3,200 pounds. We got strut front, multi-link rear, whereas in the Cayman, we have strut in all 4 corners. Also, as standard, the T includes PASM, Porsche Sport exhaust with these black tips, as you can see. A shorter 3.59 final drive, Porsche torque vectoring with LSD, sport chrono with dynamic engine mounts, and a drive mode selector on the steering wheel, 20-inch Carrera S wheels, lightweight glass, door pull straps, and reduced sound deadening. Save a bit of weight, but it's still around 3,200 pounds, the same weight as that Cayman GTS 4.0. And this one is optioned with that rear axle steer. Gotta love how the owner has the child seat in the back. And my buddy Fenton from the Zygreen YouTube channel is starting off with the Cayman. I love the interiors on these 991.2s. Love the steering wheel. Modern Porsche steering wheels are just such money. We still have analog gauges, not digital yet. These grippy cloth seats. And we're gonna start this in this normal mode, which is the only mode I'm told by the owner that lets you rev match your own downshifts. Everything else has auto rev match enabled. We'll get the Porsche Sport exhaust engaged, and we'll put traction on Sport. There we go. Now this does have a DSC Sport Controller which adjusts the PASM. We have H&R springs, GT3 front sway bar, front camber plates, Sharkwerks catback exhaust with the EvoMS tune, which is putting out 450 wheel horsepower. BMC filter, we got Michelin PS4S rubber, Girodisc rotors, and Ferodo DS2500 pads. Sounds pretty good for a turbocharged engine, but with this tune we're making more power, but you can feel a bit more lag than a stock Carrera T. 7,500 RPM redline. Porsche E-Pass gets a bad rap, but I think, you know, in the 991, which is the first generation to have E-Pass, the 997 had hydraulic steering, of course. I think the reason the 991 gets a bad rap is because they compare it to the 997, which had really phenomenal hydraulic steering. But for an E-Pass unit, this is actually not bad. You are getting some texture, a very accurate and direct steering feel. Woohoo! On its toes. We like that. Yeah, that's the right amount of power for a car of this weight. We like that. We're gonna go to Sport Plus. Can instantly feel that more immediate throttle response. Now it is also rev matching the downshifts for me. Thank you. Love how natural Porsche's inputs are. There's no learning curve to them. You get in, the steering, the brake, the throttle, the shifter, everything is just, the shifter falls to hand, beautiful ergonomics, and the feel and the weighting of everything is just so dialed in. So natural. And what I'm learning after driving more of these 911s with and without rear steer, the 991 and 992 generations, is that rear steer does a lot on a road like this to make it feel more agile and nimble. And overall just more enjoyable. Because the 911s, especially 991, 992 generations, have gotten so much larger than in years past. Very firm, easy to modulate brakes, the way that modern Porsches do. I keep heel toeing and forgetting that we have rev match engaged. It's just making me feel like my rev matches are perfect, when in reality it's just doing all the work. I love that when I get on the power, it's eager to rotate with me. The car just feels like it wants to have fun. Sometimes you get in Porsches, especially 911s, that feel a little bit too clinical. That German way of engineering out all the fun doesn't apply here. Every time I get behind the wheel of a T, I find myself enjoying it more than sometimes even higher trims like an S, as an example. Again, based on my experience, I think part of that is the rear steer. The T's are a little bit lighter, and they've optioned all the things that you care about as a driver that help with the driving feel. You want that LSD. Dude, once you get in the power, this thing hauls ass. Hauls some serious ass. I really like what the owner, Eric, has done, because, I mean, this guy is clearly a driving enthusiast. The car feels really well set up. The additional power is great. What he's done with the suspension tuning and the camber mods and such, it feels right on this road. It actually, for a 911, it feels better than what I was expecting coming in based on my experience with other 911s. And I think part of that is starting with a T, but part of that is doing these choice modifications. All right, now let's see how it compares to the GTS 4.0. 2023 Porsche 718 Cayman GTS 4.0. And as you can tell from the name, we're powered by a 4-liter naturally aspirated flat 6, making 394 horsepower, 309 pound-feet of torque. This also weighs around 3,200 pounds. But strut suspension in all 4 corners rather than multi-link in the rear as in the 911. With this GTS 4.0 trim, we do get many goodies as standard, including PASM, Porsche Sport exhaust, Sport Chrono with dynamic engine mounts, and Porsche torque vectoring with an LSD. In terms of mods, we have sole over axle pipes and a weighted shift knob, so pretty stock. And for those who are curious how this compares against my Lotus Emira V6, don't worry, we're doing that comparison soon. Subscribe if you want to see that. Interior, again, in both modern Porsches looks great, but the main thing here is that we only have 3 gauges, not 5 as in 911s. We also have some aesthetic modifications, like you got this stitching done, aftermarket, remove that airbag sticker, which I hate the airbag sticker. That looks really nice. This is also clearly aftermarket, extra thick steering wheel as a result. Weighted shift knob here. We got a 6-speed rather than a 7-speed transmission. And we're gonna start this in our regular mode. We'll leave everything in the pedestrian setting to start. Woo! 7,800 RPM red line. All right, let's put this into sport mode. Sport Plus, actually. Now, first impression, this is actually way too stiff, so I'm going to disable PASM. This road is not the smoothest. We're going to get Porsche PSM Sport engaged. Wow, that sounds good. That sounds so much better than the 911's turbo flat six. And the throttle response is immediate. The 911 having quite a noticeable degree of lag. But fuck, man, I can't tell. Is the gearing in this substantially longer than a 911? Because I feel like I'm just stuck in second. Or is that 911 just because it has more power? Does it not bother me there? Because here it definitely bothers me. I'm just still in second. Still in second. Now, even with PASM disengaged in the softer suspension setting, this is quite a bit stiffer than what we have in the 911T. I wouldn't say too stiff, but it's almost too stiff. It's getting there, but it feels far more planted and well controlled. Wow, very immediate throttle response. Over blipping it on the revs with the downshift just because so much more of a sensitive throttle response than in that 911. Yeah, the 911 suspension in the rear especially, a lot more motion to it than in this Cayman. The Cayman feels far more planted. And it's incredible to me how good they make these feel with strut in the front. And this one has strut in the rear as well. But when you're driving on public roads, not on the racetrack, it still feels so good. This actually gives way to less understeer than my Lotus Emira, which is double wishbone in all four corners. And that largely comes down to tuning. Porsche, of course, being a master of that. And just like the 911T, everything here feels so natural. There's no learning curve. The only difference really being throttle response here is far sharper than a 911T. But man, having a naturally aspirated flat six that howls at 7,800 RPM, that feels so much more special than that turbo six. Oh yeah, getting a bit of rotation. You want that LSD so that on throttle you can induce a bit of rotation. And I've been one to criticize the Cayman to say that it's a little bit too clinical and boring. I would say that it just has a higher threshold where you have to push it a bit harder and manhandle a little bit if you do want it to step out, because otherwise, yeah, it is very planted, it is very stable, it is very clinical, if you want to use that word. But between these two, I'm actually enjoying this Cayman GTS 4.0 more than that 911T. I've also criticized the Cayman's shifter in the past. The way to shift out feels good, you know, you can get into the gates a little bit smoother with that momentum. Not a huge game changer, if I'm being honest. But the other 991s and 992s that I've driven, I felt had really impressive, very, very pleasant to use shifters. And these aren't bad by any means, but this and the 911T feel far more similar. Whereas the other, you know, I drove another 911, a 991T and some 992s, and the shifters there feel like big upgrades over what we have in Caymans. Oh. If you care just about power, I get it. The 911T with that tune is gonna be your pick. But if it were my money, I'd go GTS 4.0. Because to me, this feels like a more pure driving experience. A large part of that is actually the engine. naturally aspirated, immediate throttle response. Gorgeous sound inside. The steering in this Cayman GTS 4.0 I feel is a little bit sharper as well. Slightly more feedback. And when I say sharper, I mean the input to the output, the way that the car actually changes directions. This is a great car, man. This is a great car. So the 911T, it doesn't feel quite as rear-engined as older 911 generations, and even 911s without rear steer are going to feel more rear-engine. You're going to feel that pendulous booty that really wants to swing around, which is less perfect, but adds a bit of character and adds a bit of fun to the driving experience, in my opinion. But here, this feels far more mid-engined. It feels like the weight is right around you and it's pivoting around you. You feel more planted. And if you're not pushing it hard enough, or you're not throwing it around and trying to get it to dance with you, it will feel a little bit more boring and dull as a result. But if you do push it harder, this car, I think, encourages you and feels more confidence inspiring as you push it. And while that 911T, I think, is set up in a really great way, the Cayman, right out of the box, I think offers superior handling, greater driver confidence, and especially with that naturally aspirated engine, a more focused experience. In terms of driver inputs, they're actually more similar than different. The transmission surprises me by how similar it is, but even the clutch feel, I mean, we all know that clutch feel in Porsche sports cars is second to none. The brakes also have this immediacy that gives you a lot of confidence, and then it's easy to modulate after that first initial firmness. Throttle response here, of course, has the edge with the naturally aspirated engine. And in Sport Plus mode, it's actually almost too sensitive. I shouldn't actually say it's too sensitive because it's not quite on-off switch. It's just that it'll surprise you initially and you may need to adjust to it after a couple rev match downshifts. But then after that, you gotta love that naturally aspirated throttle response. Big thanks to the owners, Keenan and Eric, for letting me review their vehicles. Big thanks to Fenton Sun from the Zygon YouTube channel for making this review possible. My friends, if you want your car reviewed, visit us on jabalandcars.com. Fill out the form on the homepage. Much love, my friends, and I'll see you all in that next one.